I don't know if anybody has had a chance to take a look at the calendar, but it's June 2nd. And for most of us, if your birthday isn't on June 1st or June 2nd, probably doesn't really matter. But when you look at an NFL calendar, June 1st is a pretty damn big deal. A lot of things are supposed to happen on June the 1st or somewhere close thereafter. It's June 2nd. Did anybody really notice June 1st? Who else could it be? Me, Louie T. Welcome to the 165th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. We've got a couple of items to attend to today before we get to any of them. Lot of basketball talk to start the show. And I know some of you are like, come on, Louie T. I didn't come here for the b-ball talk. I know. Bear with me. Sorry. I got to do this. Did you see Dame Lillard last night? That guy is effing amazing. It was Dame time in regulation. It was Dame time in overtime. It was Dame time in the second overtime. The problem is he needed help. 55 wasn't enough because he couldn't get help from anybody else. Nobody else could make any shots. You got teammates stepping out of bounds with the damn basketball on a late possession when they needed it. He was ridiculous. He was spectacular. You know, he's one of those dudes that you say to yourself, in today's NBA where everybody's switching teams, there is no loyalty to an organization or a fan base. Everybody's out to get theirs. And I don't have a problem with that. When in Rome, do as in Rome. He's one of the few that's like, nah, I'm not going nowhere. This is my home. All right. And he's made it cool to come to Portland. They've got stuff out there. They've done a really good job of trying to put a competent team around him, and they haven't failed him. You know, CJ McCollum, when he's on, he's a borderline superstar, but he's not a superstar. And that's really where the problem lies. I was having a nice conversation yesterday with, God dang it, who was I talking to? Somebody I was talking to. I think I was on Twitter talking to somebody. It might have been IG. I think it was Twitter. And we were having a conversation. And we talked about Portland in particular, Dame Lillard and his supporting cast. And, you know, we talked about Nurkic. He's just inconsistent. Still a young big man, but he's inconsistent. Melo is Melo. Melo has never played defense a day in his life. And he's not the Melo of 10 years ago in Denver. He's, you know, 35, 36, however old he is, year old Melo. You know, he's good for a three-pointer every now and again, and he gets hot like he did in game one, catches fire. You know, Melo could hit you for 5, 6 threes in a game, but they don't have that other guy. McCollum is good. He's not great. And in order to win in the NBA, you need at least 2 stars. And then the third guy needs to be, if not a star, he needs to be borderline. He needs to be borderline. They don't have that in Portland. And it's a shame because Dame, I think, is a guy that should win a title. But he probably won't. He probably won't. But that performance last night was spectacular. How about Mike Krzyzewski, my guy, Coach K? It was funny because I was having this conversation with, I want to say with my fiance about Coach K. And she said, what are y'all going to do when he retires? I said, I don't even want to talk about that. I know it's coming. He's getting up there in age and he can't coach forever, but I don't want to think about that day. And she said, well, it's going to come. And what are you guys going to do? Who's going to be the next coach of Duke? You know, the reason why all of these guys come isn't just because of the name of the program. It's because of Coach K. I said, he is the program. He is Duke basketball. So when he retires, and you know what I'm hearing? Is John Shire is supposed to be the next guy in line potentially. And I'm thinking of all the Duke players that have come through Durham, John Shire is the best we've got. And again, he's been on that bench next to Coach K forever. And maybe he is the best to take over. But I remember John Shire, the player. He might not be the same as John Shire, the person or the coach. I remember John Shire, the player, just as vanilla and milk and cheese and crackers as it gets. He can't be any more plain Jane. And so I'm looking at him and I'm saying, there's no way he's hitting the recruiting trail and getting guys to come to Durham over Kentucky and Kansas and North Carolina. No way. He can't do it. He doesn't have the charisma. I could be wrong. And we could have other guys that are on the recruiting trail that are just as good as Coach K. But he is Duke basketball. Guys chose Duke over some other 4 or 5-star program because of Coach K. And now this is it. We got to win the championship this year. And I don't even know who we got coming in. I don't care. We gotta, last year was terrible. And I think it wore on them too. Last year was rough. And you had the kid, I forgot his name. He was so garbage any damn way, that came to Duke, then quit on us midway through the season because Coach K benched his ass because he was funky and he had an attitude. And so he quit on us midway through the season, which was a rough season in which we weren't going to be eligible had we not. I thought we were going to win the ACC tournament, to be honest with you. And you're not going to get me to change my mind. We were going to make the tournament because we were going to win the ACC championship. We're going to win that whole damn tournament. And then COVID hit us again, and that was it. And then, I said, you know what? That's the perfect fitting into our season. But the news came down today that Coach K is retiring at the end of next season. And I lost my mind for a second. I lost my mind for a second because I'm like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do at Duke? There's no replacing that kind of a legend. I don't want to see our program turn into what Georgetown turned into after Big John left. You know why? Because Big John was Georgetown. And they haven't recovered since. His son tried, JT3, failed. Patrick Ewing is trying. He's currently failing, even though they just made the tournament. And he had this improbable run in the Big Ten tournament, the Big East tournament. He hasn't been good at Georgetown. They haven't recruited the same kind of athletes that they used to. They got guys transferring left and right. One of their better players just transferred again after losing the white kid that went to Texas Tech. I don't want to see Duke turn into, and I don't think it will, but I don't want to see Duke turn into Georgetown, a shell of itself. I'm worried. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I'm a lot of things. But as all things, time will tell. We'll see what happens. But that one knocked my socks off today. Okay, enough of the basketball talk. I know you're like, okay, all right. I get it. You had to get that out of your system. Hey, my Grizzlies might get eliminated tonight. I couldn't be more proud of those fellas, though. Just going to tell you right now, I think we got one more win in us. I thought we were going to win in game number 4. I was wrong. I thought we were going to win game 4. I really did. That was the first time all series long I guaranteed victory. And we got right on the doorstep. Those guys, boy, can they shoot. God, they can shoot. But I couldn't be more proud of this team. We're a year earlier than anybody expected us. And these guys won't die. And I would not be shocked that facing elimination, staring it right in the face, on the brink of being ousted from the postseason, I wouldn't be shocked that those boys, we've been better on the road this season than we have been at home. It wouldn't shock me if they went on the road and got one and prolonged this series by one more game. Wouldn't be shocked at all. Don't think it's going to happen, but couldn't be more proud of the fellas. Anyhow, I digress. Let's get to Matt McClung. Thank you, Rich. That's the name of the player that transferred from Georgetown to, it's not Matt, it's Mac McClung, to Texas Tech. Anyway, I digress. Let's jump into the show today and talk about some football or whatever there's left to talk about football. Yeah, because not a lot's going on right now, right? We can all agree on that. But I digress. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, it's June 2nd, for those of you keeping score at home. And it's, for me, because I work from home, some of these days can bleed together. Wednesday can become Thursday. Thursday could become Tuesday. Sunday could become Monday. These things kind of bleed together. My weekend, not so much. I'm not as busy on my weekends. I try to take that off, have it be family time. But the weekdays can kind of bleed together. June 1st could be June 4th, can be June 10th, can be June 16th, that sort of thing. However, so much was made of June 1st this year in particular because of Julio Jones and Aaron Rodgers and their situations that are in the balance and what holding on to these players post June 1 could mean in terms of the trade. And so everybody was sitting on pins and needles. Remember, we talked about Julio potentially getting traded this weekend. Look, we still got a couple more days left in this week. But the thought process was June 1 is going to be on Tuesday. He'll either get traded on the 1st or maybe Wednesday. He could get traded tomorrow, Thursday. He could get traded on Friday, the 4th. Highly unlikely. We'll see what happens. Bottom line is, what's the significance of June 1st anyway, right? That's what a lot of people are asking themselves. Like, why is this even an important day on the NFL calendar? Let me explain, okay? So, what June 1 is on the NFL calendar is an opportunity for teams to take roster bonuses and spread them out over multiple years for a guy that you're either going to trade or cut. So, let me give you an example. Let's say that I, as a general manager of the Arizona Cardinals, sign you to a 3-year, $45 million deal with $15 million in bonuses, okay? Theoretically speaking, roster bonuses are usually spread out evenly amongst the life of the contract. So if you've got $15 million in roster bonuses available to you over a 3-year deal, 5 years in year one, 5 million in year one, 5 million more in year two, and then your final 5 million of that $15 million roster bonus in year number 3 of that 3-year contract. What happens when I sign you to the 3-year deal? There's an exit ramp after year 1. You were so funky last year that I decide I got to get out of this thing. We draft a guy to take your place, and now we're just waiting until June 1st to cut you so we can then take your roster bonus. We got 2 years left of it at $10 million. If I cut you on May the 31st, we have to eat all $10 million of your roster bonus this year. All 10 of it, dead cap this year, can't move it. If we wait until after June 1st or on June 1st to then cut you or then trade you, we can take that same roster bonus and instead of spreading it out over, or instead of eating that $10 million this year, we can then spread that $10 million out over the remaining 2 years of your deal. So essentially $5 million on the books this year and the final $5 million the following year. So that's why June 1 is so important. That's why you hear guys like, for instance, Alshon Jeffrey, never ever trust a man with 2 first names, or somebody like that being, or Kyle Rudolph is another one that was released with a June 1 post designation, okay? So a post June 1 designation, meaning, yeah, those guys are free to go sign wherever they like, but it won't become official until after June the 1st because we're not actually going to cut that guy loose until June 1st. Technically on the books, but you can go do whatever you want to do. You're done. You're not coming back here. You're done here. But we're not actually releasing that guy until June the 1st, so we can spread that money that we have remaining, those bonuses, out over the life of that contract. So if a guy signs a 5-year deal, all right, and they get out of the contract after year 2 and there are 3 years remaining on that contract, and let's say there are $21 million left of roster bonuses for that player, You can take the $21 million in roster money, that bonus money that is due to that player, and eat it in 1 year. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants $21 million of dead cap money. Or you can take the final 3 years of that deal, spread it $7 million evenly over the final 3 years, and then cut that guy after June 1. That's why June 1 is important on the calendar. So it's not really important for us as fans. We can give a shit about that, but for general managers, it's very important. When you're talking about balancing the books and getting everything situated, that's why it's important. But when you hear them talk about June 1 and cuts and things of that nature, that's why they don't happen until after June the 1st. Because if it's a veteran and he's got a couple of years left and you got some roster bonuses and he may have $2.5 million worth of roster bonuses, instead of you eating that $2.5 million, teams are penny pinching this year, specifically this year because of the reduced cap. That, hey, in a regular year, $2.5 million on the cap might not be that bad. You just eat it and move on. But in this year, where it's a pretty damn big deal, the guy's got 2 years left and it's $2.5 million worth of roster bonus. You're like, hey, I'll take 1.75 of that this year, and I'll take 1.75 of it next year. Like, I'm not looking to eat all of that right now. Every single cent counts. So, that's the importance of roster bonuses. Again, I'm not the biggest roster bonus guy in the world. It doesn't really, or I'm not the biggest June 1 guy, because it used to seem like a much bigger deal when I was growing up, did these roster bonuses. But all of a sudden, it seems like they've taken on, or June 1, I should say, is taking on lesser meaning. Less guys are getting cut post June 1 than ever before. I remember once upon a time, you didn't see a lot of guys getting cut in February and March and April and May. Anybody that was a veteran was getting cut in June. You wanted to get rid of a veteran. It was happening in June. Now teams they're getting so good at manipulating these deals or putting themselves in a position where there isn't any extra money there to be had, that they can cut a guy whenever they feel like it. So teams are getting smarter. These contracts are set up with exit ramps so that you don't have to wait till post June 1. A lot of times the post June 1 cuts are for guys that you didn't expect to have to cut. A guy like a name that keeps coming up as a potential June 1, a post June 1 cut, is Jamison Crowder in New York with the Jets. That's a name that keeps coming up. The Jets, he's been their best receiver really the last 2 years. That's not an expected cut. However, if you are penny pinching, if you're looking for some extra money, and they've done a lot at the receiver position. They just signed Corey Davis. They drafted Denzel Mims last year. They expect all these guys to be healthy. They've done a lot of things in free agency and the draft over the last couple of years. A guy like Jamison Crowder may be expendable at this point. It's a new regime. Out with the old, in with the new. And so he might be a guy that they weren't expecting to cut. He might still have $9 million left in roster bonuses, on maybe 2 or 3 years left on his deal. And they may want to spread that out over the life of that contract. That's the kind of thing you would see happen potentially. But not a lot of guys are getting cut post June 1. Like, we may see a trade or two. Julio's getting traded for sure. Just a matter of where and for how much. What's the compensation going to be? But he's getting traded. Aaron Rodgers, not so much. We'll talk more about that later on in the show. But I thought this was pretty interesting. So I wanted to read this to you guys real quick. So post June 1, here are the cap numbers for every team in the league. And this is why these conversations are important. I don't think Jamison Crowder is a cap casualty unless they deem him himself, not his money, him, the player, as expendable. Like, we don't need him on the roster. We got other guys that we want to take a look at. The Jets aren't hurting for bread, as you'll find out here in a second. So, and they got Elijah Moore. Thank you, Rich. They just drafted Elijah Moore, one of my favorite receivers in this year's draft out of Ole Miss. So a guy like Jamison Crowder could be expendable. They don't necessarily need him because they got a bunch of young guys that they think can come in and play and help, and they don't need a veteran like Jamison Crowder. That said, I want to take a look at everybody's cap situation post June 1 and where everyone sits. So you'll realize who are the desperate teams out there and who aren't. So let's talk about it real quick. So right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars have the most cap space, which it seems like they always have the most cap space in the league. They've got $39 million. Even though they spent a whole bunch of money, it seems like they signed everyone that the Texans or the Patriots didn't sign with Jacksonville, yet they still have $39 million of cap space remaining, and that's tops in the league. Behind them are the Denver Broncos, who have $32 million worth of cap space. So the Jaguars are $7 million clear of the next closest team in terms of cap space remaining post June 1. Broncos have $32 million. They're second in the league. The Jets have $29 million worth of cap space available to them. So again, they're not hurting for the money in terms of Jamison Crowder, and if they really want to recoup any money. That would be more of a move because, hey, we got young guys. We want to free up snaps for this young guy. We think that this young guy can help us. And they don't have to make that decision now. If you're the Jets, you don't have to cut Jamison Crowder right now. Because what if something happens to Elijah Moore or one of your other receivers? You wish you kept Jamison Crowder. You get to the end of camp, and then you can part ways with Jamison Crowder. Everybody's healthy. You got all your hands on deck for the start of the season. Then you say, all right, we can move on from Jamison Crowder. Now, that would make more sense than cutting ties with him at this current juncture. The Bengals sit with $24 million worth of cap space. So the Bengals still have a considerable amount of money. Not a surprise. They don't really like to spend a lot of their money, even though they've been active a little bit more here recently in free agency than they have been in the past. That said, they still got $24 million worth of cap space available to them. The Browns have $21 million. You remember going into free agency, the Browns were among one of the most cap available teams in terms of freed up cap space going into free agency this year, and they are still one of the better cap situations in the league with $21 million. The Chargers sit with $20 million worth of cap space available to them. So those are all the teams with 20 or north of it. The Chargers come in at 6th in the league with $20 million worth of cap space. The Lions are at $18.8 million worth of cap space. And it seems like the Lions have been trying to make all kinds of moves to put themselves in a position to continue to better their team next offseason. This year, mass exodus at the receiver position. Not only did Kenny Golladay leave, not only did they also move on from Marvin Jones, but I think they also had another receiver out there, Danny Amendola, none of them of which are back this season. So the Lions have been cutting costs, but they did find some money to sign Frank Ragnow. So, you know, the team, this is one thing about teams you'll find is that the guys that they want, they find ways, they make ways to sign those guys. The 49ers sit with $17.6 million. Seems like they spent some money. They didn't spend a ton of it on a bunch of different players, just on one in particular, Trent Williams. They also did re-sign Kyle Juszczyk. So they spent some money, but they had it to spend. Panthers, $17.1 million worth of cap space available to them right now. They check in at number 9 in the league. Washington comes in at $17 million flat available to them. They're 10th in the league in cap space. Patriots, even with their free agency frenzy spending spree, they still have $15 million worth of cap space available to them. So, you know, that's how much they had to begin with, that they spent all that money and they still have $15 million worth of cap space available to them. And again, even when you see how much they spent, they're not spending all of that in 1 year. You know, and there are creative ways to set deals up so that all of it doesn't hurt you on the cap. Some of it can be signing bonus money. You can reallocate it in different ways. You know, one of the creative things that everyone was doing with these deals this year is signing deals and having it be like 8-9 year deals, and then the last 5 years of it is voidable, and you know, things of that nature. You can get really creative with the cap, and you've seen teams do that this year. The Indianapolis Colts have $14.7 million available. They're 12th. The Minnesota Vikings have $14 million available. They're 13th. The Arizona Cardinals have $13.5 million, 14th in the league. The Buffalo Bills have $12.5 million. They are now 15th in the league. And I just saw them do something interesting with Stephon Diggs, converting some of his base salary into some upfront money. So that's going to free up some cap space there as well for Buffalo. So again, there are ways to do it if you need to. The Ravens have $10 million available to them under the cap right now. They're 16th. The Cowboys have $9 million under the cap. The Dolphins, $8.7 million. They're 18th. The Texans have $8.5 million available. They're 18th, or 19th, excuse me. The Bears are 20th with $8.4 million available. The Chiefs have $8 million available to them. They're 21st. The Steelers are 22nd with $7.4 million remaining under the cap. Seahawks are 23rd, $7.2 million. Rams, $7 million flat. They're 24th in the league in terms of cap space remaining post June 1. Eagles, $6.5 million under the cap, 25th in the league. Packers, $5 million remaining for them. They're 26th in the league, and they've been doing some really interesting things with their cap, including they just gave Robert Tonyan, the tight end, a brand new contract when they didn't have to, just so they can give him, like, I think 3 or 4 years extra on the deal, void the end of the deal, but spread the money out over the life of the contract so that it lessens the cap hit for them. Like, they're doing every little thing, which to me, all signs point to Aaron Rodgers being back, but we'll talk about that later on in the show. The Giants, $4.8 million under the cap. They're 27th in the league. The Raiders have $4 million worth of cap space remaining. They're 28th. The Titans, which is why a lot of people don't think they have the ability to go out and get Julio Jones, even though they have seemed to have been the team that has had their name come up the most. They've only got $3.3 million worth of cap space remaining. So they'd have to get pretty damn creative, because word out on the street is Julio not only is going to cost you upwards of $9 million this year on your cap, he also wants a new deal wherever he is traded. That's going to complicate things for some teams. I think I saw 2 teams like the Ravens and somebody else drop out after, I think they might have either been scared away by the Falcons' price, or they might have been scared away by the Julio wanting a new deal talk. So either way, that situation is interesting in itself. But the Titans only have $3.3 million under the cap, which that's a hindrance to getting any deal done for Julio Jones. They're 29th in the league. The Bucks are 30th in the league with $2 million worth of cap space. They pretty much spent all of their cap re-signing all the guys that helped them win the Super Bowl. So they're in a really good spot. Falcons, remember we talked about how dire straits of a situation they're in and why trading Julio is so important. They're 31st in the league with $357,000 of cap space. That's why they want to trade Julio so bad, because they are dying over there. They got nothing, okay? They barely had enough money to sign their draft picks. Like, they're hurting over there. And then the Saints, they never have any cap space. That's why they're always a Super Bowl contender, though, because they're always re-signing guys or signing free agents or whatever the case may be. They usually go right up until you get to that point where you're like, hey, you got to stop signing people. We don't got any more money. $349,000 for the Saints. They rank dead last in the league in terms of cap space. So that's where everyone sits right now as of June the 2nd in terms of cap space. And you'll see moves being made like the ones the Bills just made with Stephon Diggs, or the one the Packers just made with Robert Tonyan, their tight end. You'll see teams doing that, finding ways creatively to free up some cap space if they so choose. And so you find out why June 1 is important, not so much for us as fans, more so for general managers around the league. So that's going to do it for the gem dropping session. We will transition into our next segment, which is social media maneuvers, as every Wednesday, where you guys have a chance to take over the show. If you are out there and you want your comment read, we'll get as many of them out of the way as we can. Use the hashtag LouieTeeLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent. But first, we're going to take this quick break, get a word from one of our sponsors, and I will see you guys on the other side. You are locked in to the 165th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I will see you guys on the other side. I want to take this time out to thank Manscaped for sponsoring the Louie T Network podcast. Manscaped has the right tools to get the job done quickly, safely, and hygienically. Father's Day is just around the corner, and you probably need a gift for your hairy dad. Make sure your dad is proud this year and get him and yourself the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0 and Ultra Smooth package. You know what they say, like father, like son. The brand new Lawnmower 4.0 and Ultra Smooth package is perfect for you and the dad in your life to complete your grooming game. Let me give you a little bit more information on both of those outstanding products, starting first with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is now available in both the US and in Canada. So what makes this waterproof trimmer different from all the other trimmers? This 7,000 RPM trimmer features skin-safe technology to keep your balls in check and has helped reduce manscaping accidents around the globe. A new multifunctional on and off switch can engage a travel lock created for jet setters. The Lawnmower 4.0 gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. Additional guard lengths with sizes 1 to 4 let you trim to your liking. Then you get to the Ultra Smooth package. Comes in 3 different steps to take care of your family jewels. Step number 1, the crop exfoliator. Infused with ingredients that can soothe, clear, and keep the skin on and around your groin feeling refreshed, reducing the risk of ingrown hairs by your delicacies. Gotta keep those guys nice and safe. Step number 2 is the crop gel. See where you're shaving with Manscaped's unique clear shaving gel just for your groin. And step 3, now it's time to clear out the bushes. Time to shave. The crop shaver now comes into play, which was designed for shaving the groin area with confidence. 3 precision blades, including extra wide lubricating strips and a pivoting head for the ultimate groin grooming experience. All 3 of these are vegan, which you know I love because I am vegan. Cruelty-free and sulfate-free products are included, so you know your manhood is in good hands. Stop imagining your dad has it covered because he probably doesn't. More likely than not, he probably doesn't, okay? Get 20% off plus free shipping when you use the promo code LouieT. That's 20% off plus free shipping when you use the promo code LouieT at manscaped.com. This is the perfect package for you and your dad's perfect package. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code LouieT at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the promo code LouieT. It's dad bod season. Time to get smooth. And trust me when I tell you this, your dad and your balls will thank you. Welcome back to the show. Greatly appreciate you tuning in to the 165th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Want to take this time to ask you guys to subscribe to the Louie T Network podcast if you have not already done so. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing, and like this video if you haven't already done so. And if you're listening to this on some podcast platform, please rate and review this podcast favorably, 5 stars preferably, and a great comment. That is greatly appreciated. And so let's transition into social media maneuvers where you guys get to take over the show. We can talk about whatever you want as long as it is within realm of this show and tasteful. Okay. So with that said, I do have a super chat to get to first to kick things off from my guy Door Gunner. Great to hear from you. Always great to hear from my guy Door Gunner, who writes, glad to be able to catch your live streams again. Looking forward to seeing how the wide receiver, O-line, and tight end battles play out. Hashtag the champs are here. Hashtag Dallas, New York, Philly suck. Amen to both of those hashtags. And those will be very intriguing battles for sure. And I've got a Washington video that I will be uploading as soon as this podcast is over. So be on the lookout for that. as well as week 2 of OTAs are underway, and I had a lot to say and listen to all of the interviews done post-practice. So that'll be up on the Louie T Network shortly after this podcast has met its conclusion. So will another unboxing video for the CCS. So if you're interested in that, check that out. I'll be going live not too long after this podcast is over as well. But let's get to the comment section and allow you guys to do what you do best, and that is take over Wednesday's show. Starting with my guy Rich, who says, since we talk in basketball, which we were doing earlier in the show, which I love, so I have no problems talking about it. Rocco missed that crucial dunk, and CJ's built-up habits lost them the game. So yes, Robert Covington did miss. He missed a couple of dunks, a couple of putback dunks. However, you could look at it the other way and say that Monte Morris missed a free throw that allowed you guys, allowed Portland to have a chance for Dame to hit a 3 to send it to double overtime. He also missed a point blank layup. I don't know how he missed that, bunny. That would have put the game out of reach, put them up 5, and would have put them out of range for Dame to hit a 3 to send it to double overtime. So there were opportunities for Portland to put the game away, or rather the Nuggets to put the game away, and they failed to do so. I mean, they were up 9 with just a shade over 2 minutes left. That game was over, and somehow they managed to allow Portland to come back and tie that game, send it to double overtime. So yeah, but a lot of opportunities missed by both teams, honestly speaking. What up, Jay Willard? Appreciate you. Rich says, back to B-ball. I'm a Wizards fan, and I know we're going to lose the series, but not tonight. Just want to get rid of Scott Brooks ASAP and hopefully get Jeremy Grant or DeRozan. So I think this foray into the postseason, this late season flurry, is going to save Scott Brooks' job, honestly speaking. And, you probably could use an upgrade at the coaching position, but I think the players actually like him. We know Russell Westbrook and Scott Brooks have a tremendous relationship. That's part of the reason that Russell Westbrook is even in Washington as we speak. I don't see you losing tonight because there is no Joel Embiid tonight. He's going to be out for Game 5. So I think the Wizards have another opportunity to win. And as long as Ben Simmons is out there shooting free throws, I don't see how you lose this game. Honestly, as long as the Sixers don't heat up from 3-point distance, you don't have one of those out-of-body experiences that we saw in Game 1 from their wing. Shucks. Can't even think of his name, but he went ape shit in the first game. Couldn't miss a shot, it seemed like. I think he had like 27 in the first half. As long as you don't get one of those types of performances. I don't know how Seth Curry is doing. I know he was injured earlier in the series. But if Danny Green and Seth Curry and all those guys that can shoot it, flat out shoot it, Kormaz, if those guys don't come alive and they don't mess around and they hit, 18 threes, I don't see how you guys don't find a way to win that game. Anyway, Jay Willard says, Louie, when all of this noise is being made by star players like Watson, Rodgers, Jones, and others, do you see teams taking hardline positions so the NFL doesn't turn into the NBA? I do think there's a little bit of that, and that's a great comment, Jay Willard, and a great question. I do think there's a little bit of that. These owners are stubborn. They don't want to see the players take over the league. Remember the comments being made that were made once upon a time by former Texans owner Bob McNair, may he rest in peace, where he said, we don't want the asylums, the inmates running the asylum, essentially, which he didn't. I don't think he meant to necessarily use that analogy. I think he was looking for something a little bit softer. And I think after he said it, he realized, oops, I think I messed up on that one. But that's essentially how these owners feel, though. Like, they don't want the players running the league. I think they're all for the players having a voice, this, that, and the third, but there's like a point where they have to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, you guys, enough's enough, all right? Can't have players dictating where they go and this, that, and the third. And so I think there is a bit of a power struggle between the owners and players, and that's why the Seahawks were so upset at Russell Wilson for making the comments that he made. But then in the same breath, they realized, hey, we could be as pissed off as we want. But the reason we went to the playoffs 8 out of the last 9 years is not because of Pete Carroll and John Schneider and the fantastic job they've done at assembling late round and undrafted talent. It's because of Russell Wilson. And the quicker you understand that the league is driven by its stars, specifically the quarterback. Like, look, if Julio Jones was to be, outlandish, if Odell Beckham Jr. wants to mouth off, you can trade those dudes in a heartbeat. You can find another one of those. And it's not going to be easy, but you can find another one of those. So you can put together a collection of receivers that help you get the job done. I remember reading something about superstar wide receivers winning Super Bowls in the league, and it just doesn't happen really very often. Some of that has to do with the Patriots winning all those Super Bowls and Brady never really having a guy outside of Randy Moss, and Moss never won a Super Bowl in New England. So you can look at it like superstars really don't win championships in this league. So at the receiver position, that is. But the quarterbacks do. And they do dictate how big you win in this league. The Chiefs aren't the Chiefs without Patrick Mahomes. The Packers aren't the Packers without Aaron Rodgers, which is why they don't want to cut ties with him, which is why they don't want him to go. The Seahawks, for all the shit that they may have been talking behind the scenes, they'll never let that get out to the media because they know without Russell Wilson, they go back to the Tavares Jackson days, to the Matt Flynn days. Hey, that's why I always used to laugh at Cowboys fans that used to want to run Tony Romo out of town. I'm like, you do know what it was like pre-Tony Romo, right? And I think so fast fans forget sometimes of what it could get. It could get a lot worse and what it could go back to. And when you have a greater appreciation for what the past looks like and what the present is, that's why Washington fans always used to infuriate me with Kirk Cousins. I'm like, you do realize what this was before he got here, right? And what it's been since he left, right? But they didn't understand that in the moment, and they don't care. A lot of them don't give a shit. Oh, Kirk stinks. Okay, that's fine. You may think he's trash, but you remember what it was before he got here, right? Do you remember what it was, how it's been since he's left? That was what I was trying to avoid. So when you look at these organizations, they're not dumb. They understand that these players, specifically the quarterback position, they're important. When Mahomes speaks up about not being protected, you saw what the Chiefs have done this offseason, right? All of their resources essentially have been spent on the offensive line. Not going to piss off my quarterback. That's what you're not going to do. You saw what the Seahawks did. Their response to Russell Wilson spouting off, right? Hey, we're going to draft you a receiver. We only got 3 draft picks, one of which we're going to spend on receiver, and we're going to go out here and get you an offensive lineman with one of those picks, and we're going to trade for Gabe Jackson. So sometimes the squeaky wheel does get the oil. And in this case, I think teams, they are a little conscious of what these players are doing, but they don't want them to go too far. I do think there is a bit of that involved. Indeed, Jay Willard. Thank you for that comment. Kevin, the PRF, writes, let's see. If I were the Falcons GM with that cap, not just Julio, I would have traded or dumped Ryan and other vets, trade down a few spots, take a quarterback. It's not like they're Tampa Bay. They're trash. So, Kevin, here's the problem with that Matt Ryan in particular scenario you posed. They would actually lose more cap space if they were to trade Matt Ryan than to hold on to him. It accelerates. So right now, Matt Ryan is counting something like $38 million of cap space. If they were to trade him or release him, it then accelerates to something astronomical like $45 million worth of cap space. So they could, even if they wanted to move on from Matt Ryan, they couldn't do it. It's not feasible. It doesn't make any sense for them. There's no benefit, no gain, short or long term, for the Atlanta Falcons to move on from Matt Ryan. So it doesn't make any sense for them to do that. What up, KP Underdog? Mega412 writes, you think we, Washington football team, switching up our defense this year, we brought on a lot of man cover corners this offseason and we played a lot of zone last year. What do you think, bro? I do think they're going to be a lot more emphasis. And Jack has alluded to this. He hasn't come out and said this because that's not his style to just come out and bluntly tell you what they plan on doing, nor should it be. But he's already said bringing on William Jackson III gives us some flexibility that we didn't really have a season ago. Not to say that Ronald Darby couldn't play man-to-man, but they wanted Darby. One of the issues he had in Philadelphia was keeping everything in front of him. So the easiest way to do that is to just play zone. Play a ton of zone, play a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 4. That's going to keep everything in front of you. You know, deeper than the deepest. Play your third or your quarter of the field. And we played a lot of cover 3 last year. So I think they have guys that they feel like have the speed, the length, the ability to play man-to-man, stay with their guys vertically. And so it's going to allow them to blitz and do some different things. And Del Rio has already alluded to that already. So, yeah, I do think they're going to do a little something different. Tobias Harris, that's the name that I was looking for. Loser loves the Capitals. Thank you for that assist. Tobias Harris was the name that lit the Wizards up in game number 1. If he gets hot and you get a couple of those perimeter shooters to get hot, it could be a long night. But I think the Wizards should be able to win this game. They've got a little bit of momentum after taking game number 4. Rich says, Scott's not coming back. His contract is up once we get eliminated, and our GM already told sources he must win the finals to come back. Yes, his contract is up. We'll see what they decide to do. It'll be interesting to see what this direction they decide to go in. It's a lot easier to get rid of a coach when he's no longer under contract. And, you know, in the NBA, it's not like college or, you know, well, it's really college where you don't want a lame duck coach. And the NFL too, because it's hard to get guys on your staff if you've only got a year left on your contract. The NBA seems like they're perfectly fine with guys playing out the string of their contract. That's weird. But the NBA isn't a coach's league, it's a player's league. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense. Where it's the opposite in the NFL, where it's more of a coach's league. The players on the field are going to determine the outcome, but coaches definitely are a big part of the outcome of ball games week in and week out. Kevin the PRF says, you missed my comment at the very top, I referenced a report I heard of Jay-Z possibly making a minority ownership pitch at the Washington football team. I didn't see that comment. Maybe it went away. Oh, I did miss it. It's at the very top. Sorry. It says, has anyone contacted 99 Problems and Chase ain't one, so Jay-Z has to pay him that copyright? I haven't talked about that because I don't really care about Jay-Z owning any portion of this team. It'd be cool, great, awesome, but that stuff I really don't get into. Daniel Snyder's still going to own the team, and that's what I care about. So anyway, Rich says, Kirk stinks, but I understand what you mean before and after, but I'd still rather not have him. That was from Rich, which, again, I don't understand that. He stinks, but we've been terrible at the quarterback position since he left. And barring the one season of RG3 or Robert Griffin III in 2012, we were horrible at the quarterback position before he got here. But I'd rather not have him. I can never wrap my brain around that. I'd rather be terrible at the quarterback position than to have a guy that set multiple franchise records for your organization. Okay. I don't get it. I never will, and maybe I need to stop trying to make sense of that. Gregory Lightbody. Is it concerning that we haven't heard anything from Jamin Davis in camp? It's OTAs. Why would you be concerned? And we actually did hear something about Jamin Davis in camp today. I've done a video. You'll see that here shortly, but no, you shouldn't be concerned. It's literally the second week of off-season training activities, and they're voluntary. No, you shouldn't be concerned about anything. Jay Willard says, since you talked about basketball first, I just thought I'd let you know I am originally from the DMV area, but now I live 40 minutes outside of Memphis, and I too like me some Grizzlies at FedEx Forum. That's great to know, Jay. There are not a lot of us out here, at least not in this area in particular, and I love me some Grizzlies basketball, and I'm so proud of the fellas. And I know the city is buzzing, when the Grizzlies are good. And I can't wait until being at the Grindhouse at FedEx Forum actually means something, because this year didn't mean anything. One, the crowd wasn't there. Now that the crowd is back, I love the environment that was there, but we haven't been good at home this year, period. I think we were only 500 this season. We're a better road team than at home, so they've got to get better on their home floor. Gregory Lightbody writes, Kirk was never an elite quarterback. Nobody ever said he was with us, but if we had him, we're now winning the division and in the playoffs. Right. No one ever said Kirk was an elite quarterback. I think that's where the mistake was made. A lot of people, somewhere in translation, got their signals crossed and made up in their mind that people were chanting that Kirk was some kind of top 10 quarterback in this league. No one ever said that. What he did was he gave us a chance to win every week. Did he come through in the clutch a lot of times? No. But did he fail every time in the clutch? No. And that's, I think, a lot of the story gets kind of blurred and people start making up their own narratives with Kirk. But to Gregory's point, and again, if Kirk's here, I don't think we're in a position to draft Chase Young or any of the, I don't know how good this defense really is. But if we're playing that game and we just insert Kirk into the lineup with the defense as it's currently constituted, we're not necessarily a Super Bowl contender, but you're not far away from it. Just a thought. KP Underdog says, what's good, Lou? Since you're talking basketball, I'm a Knicks fan. Imagine Dame Dollars playing in the Garden. Imagine a lot of players playing in the Garden. And they're going to go after some big-name free agents this offseason because it's now a place that players would like to play again. For a long time, James Dolan made the Knicks organization a destination that was untouchable. You couldn't go to New York and play basketball because they were such a losing organization with a stigma that just was one that ownership isn't going to allow you to win. Well, this season with the young Knicks and Julius Randle playing as well as they have, and getting D Rose back in New York and him playing well, and RJ Barrett and all the young guys and Bullocks and all those guys that have played well for you this year. Here come the Knicks, and I think they're going to go out and try to get somebody this offseason. All right. Gregory says, if they're working out Jamin at middle linebacker so much, what does that mean he will play Mike? We'll see. We don't know what happens. We don't know what's going to happen. We really don't. Rich says, here's my thing. Kirk was taking us too many mediocre seasons. You do realize we had one of the worst defenses in the league, so you're just going to put that all on Kirk, I'm assuming. You're one of those people. Says, even with great surrounding core, the defense wasn't great, but it wasn't that good. My biggest thing was he was a sub QB. He wasn't a sub QB. Super Bowls, and we can both agree Kirk wasn't going to do that. I like division wins, but after a while, I want more. He says, one of my favorite players growing up was Sidney Moncrief. Or, I just skipped a whole comment. So, he says, I want Super Bowls, and we both can agree Kirk wasn't going to do that. I like division wins, but after a while, I want more. We all want more. But you never gave Kirk, and you're not alone, fans like yourself never gave Kirk an opportunity to have a competent defense playing alongside him, have an actual run game accompany him throwing for over 4,000 yards. Like, you guys, a lot of you in the fan base didn't acknowledge that the defense was damn near dead last every year. We were the worst on third downs every year Kirk was here, and he had no run game every single year he was here, yet he still found a way to throw for 4,000 yards and have this passing game be potent. But you fail to acknowledge any of that stuff because it's Kirk's fault. That's the stuff that I just can't understand, and I never will. Kevin the PRF says, one of my favorite players growing up was Sidney Moncrief, who was the Damian Lillard of my generation. Great player who never left and never got a great team around him. That was a different era, but Sidney Moncrief could score the basketball. The problem with Damian Lillard is this is the environment now is that you go hunt a championship. And he's just not that guy. And I love that about him, by the way. But I think also in saying that, it's going to be hard to get somebody to come to Portland. They don't have the caps flexibility because they had to pay CJ McCollum. Because they have guys on the roster that aren't garbage. It's a solid roster. It's just not a championship roster. That's the problem. Jay Willard says, Kirk was so up and down. He reminds me of a younger Fitzpatrick. You like that or the pick six for the other team for the loss? So I don't see any of that. Like the pick six for the loss, how many times did he actually throw a pick six that broke our back? He's thrown some late game picks that lost us games. But the bottom line is there were some games where Kirk didn't play his best ball. And obviously the Giants game at the end of the 16 season comes to mind. Had a chance to make the postseason. He played arguably his worst game at the worst time, and everybody remembers that. But also, do you remember Matt Jones? Who? Matt Jones fumbling against Detroit in a game that we could have won. Or Dustin Hopkins missing a field goal in that game as well. Do you remember that? Do you remember Dustin Hopkins missing a field goal over in London against Cincinnati that would have won that game, a chip shot field goal at that would have given us the win that we needed to get us in the postseason that year. There are a lot of reasons why we didn't make the playoffs. Kirk was one of them against the Giants. But then do you remember the stories that were told of the week of practice heading into that Giants game of Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon and all those guys cutting up and acting a fool the week leading up to that game? There were a lot of different things that you guys don't take into consideration. But I digress. We'll be talking in circles, really, because I'm not going to be able to convince any of you that Kirk was the right man for the job. Kevin the PRF says, if we kept Kirk, Chase Young is a Giant, so that's a long con win I'll take. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Mega 412 says, reports have been saying our UDFA Patterson has been looking great in camp. I know we take that lightly, but do you see them keeping him on the active roster? Patterson better than Miller. I do see him potentially making a team, but I mean, we're not in camp right now. We're in OTAs. Okay. So let's make sure we're using the right verbiage. Camp is in late July into August. We're in OTAs. So again, nothing that is said at this time of the year needs to be taken too seriously. Jordan Jones says, I know all situations are different, but what do you think the appropriate punishment is for fans acting up at these NBA games? I mean, what are you going to do? It's not really much you can do. I mean, fans have been acting crazy for years. It's just being amplified now because it's in a concentrated setting. You know, it's in the playoffs, all eyes on all of these games. And you know, there've been these instances where you see it on film, whether it's Westbrook having popcorn dumped on him or a fan spitting on Trae Young. You had a fan run on the court. These are usually isolated incidents, but things happen at games. The fans are always doing stupid things, taking it to the extreme. Fans in Utah have been racist for years. That's why Michael Jordan didn't allow his kids to go to the games when they were in the finals every year against the Jazz. That's not new. Fans in Indiana and Utah's in Boston have been two of the most racist environments to go sit and watch a game. Period. Always have been, probably always will be in the NBA. So it's not surprising when I hear that John Morant's parents are being harassed by fans and they had to escort a fan out of the stadium for being racist. Not overly racist, because it's not okay to be just semi-racist. He was being overtly racist towards John Morant's dad. But it wasn't everybody in the crowd. And that's pretty much how I feel about these fans cutting up. It's not all of the fans. It's just a select, very small few. But when you see it, it's a problem and it becomes amplified. There's not really much you can do, though. What are you going to do? Stop the fans from coming to the games altogether? Like, I mean, there's not really much you can do. You can tell us that you're banning that guy for life. The security guards at the door who check your tickets aren't going to stop, and they're not looking at a flyer to make sure that this guy doesn't come back. I'm pretty sure if you're a season ticket holder, that's where you get hurt, because they take your season tickets from you. They know your name, and now you're not allowed to buy season tickets anymore. But that guy can get a single game ticket and come back. I'd like to see them stop that guy from coming inside the building. Now, I like that they're pressing charges. Damn right, press charges against them. That deters behavior. These slaps on the wrist, oh, this guy's been banned forever. That's a slap on the wrist. And that's not going to stop anybody from doing something. Press felony charges. That'll stop. And that'll make somebody think twice about doing some stupid shit. Let's see. I'll take a couple more, then we'll move on. Rich says, I acknowledge that the defense was trash in my other comment, but our defense probably wasn't going to be any good with Kirk's contract or mediocre seasons, and the run game could have improved. Well, Kirk's contract wasn't going to be a hindrance. If they would have signed Kirk when they were supposed to after the 15th season, when all he wanted was $48 million in guaranteed money, his contract would have looked like peanuts, and he would have still been on that same contract right now. He would have still either been on that contract or at the back end of that contract, and we would have been either re-upping Kirk, or we would have been out of the Kirk business by now. But that's nor here nor there. Zach Mango, I think you missed my question about the Cowboys linebackers and trade rumors. Did you use the hashtag? I might have missed it. Yeah, I don't see your comment with a hashtag, so that's probably why I skipped over it. You got to use the hashtag so I can know you're addressing me. Let's see. Let's take a couple more. Rich says, but with that, I'm still not confident of him taking us to the Super Bowl, and don't just act like Matt Jones had that one good year, not enough. I know, but he's still not a Super Bowl quarterback. He may not have been, but you don't know. We never gave him a chance to show that in Washington. With an actual competent defense, some semblance of a run game, we never gave him a chance in Washington, so we'll never know. Easy to say. Jay Willard says, yes, I do remember those things in the 16 in 16 seasons, and I was just spoiled growing up in the 80s with Gibbs 1.0. Those great teams we had back then. We've been looking for a quarterback for 30 years. Not everybody was exposed to that. That's the thing, is a lot of these young fans, like Rich, for instance, they don't know anything about that. This is all they know. All they know is dysfunction. All they know is switching quarterbacks like you switch underwear. So they're okay with running guys out of town. Well, we can find something better. They haven't been a fan long enough to know that this is not okay. Looking for a new quarterback every year. That's not okay. That's not what you want for your organization. So, anyway, I digress. Got a super chat. This will wrap up social media maneuvers for today. Calvin Krim, my guy Calvin Krim, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, hey Lou, you think the NBA is more exciting now or when we were younger? Feels different now, and I don't know what needs to be done to make it better. I think the players today are more skilled than the players were when we grew up. There weren't guys shooting the ball like Steph Curry or Dame Lillard. There weren't any, ball handlers like Kyrie Irving or, Tim Hardaway. There were guys that could dribble the basketball, but not like Kyrie Irving, not like Steph Curry, that have the ball on the string, essentially. I think the game is a little bit more free-flowing. It's a faster pace. They're more skilled. That said, I don't know if it always makes for more compelling basketball. I enjoyed my era of basketball much better, but, that's not fair because that was my youth. That was my childhood. That's what I grew up watching. I loved it, and it was a different style. Playoffs, think about it. It was nothing for the Bulls to win a playoff game 89-84. 89-84 is midway through the third quarter in most of these games. We're going into the fourth quarter at 99-94. And that was the end of a game in the 90s. So it's a different game, man. It's a totally different game. And I'm okay with that. When it comes to basketball, I'm not an old man, get off my lawn. I appreciate what these new guys bring to the game. And I accept them for what they are and what they've brought to the game. And I love watching it. But I think it was better in the 90s when you could take a guy's head off in the playoffs and you didn't have to worry about being suspended for 2 games. And every foul wasn't a flagrant one. So, but again, I'm not get off my lawn old man in terms of basketball. So anyway, I digress. Let's transition to our final segment of the day. You know what it is. Garbage time. And today for Garbage Time, it's just simply an Aaron Rodgers trade update. So I found this fascinating. So a couple of tweets from Tom Pelissero, who works for the NFL Network. And he writes this right here in 2 separate tweets. He says, the Packers executed a rare maneuver in re-signing tight end Robert Tonyan. This is what I was referring to earlier. He says, treating most of his $3.384 million restricted free agent tender as bonus for salary cap purposes, tacking on 4 voidable years and saving close to $1.9 million on this year's cap. So that's one of those post-June 1 moves that you can make. They converted it to bonuses, then extended the deal out 4 voidable years so they could extend that money out evenly for those 5 years of that deal. And it saved them $1.9 million. So you see how they got clever there. In a normal year, $1.9 million, peanuts. But in a year where everybody's strapped for cash, and the Packers, I told you, only had $5 million worth of cap space remaining, you do everything you can to be able to keep that cap space available. It says they've cleared about $4.4 million total in the past week. So the Packers are trying to clean up the books. He also goes on to write in a separate tweet, Green Bay has been tight up against the cap all offseason, but they wouldn't need these nickel and dime moves if they traded Aaron Rodgers, freeing up over $16 million in cap space. Clearing cap now is another indication they're planning for the NFL MVP to be on the team in 2021. And I agree with that sentiment, that if they were going to trade him, then there's no need to nickel and dime your way to more cap space. If you're going to free up an entire $16 million worth of cap space, what do you care about $1.9 million worth of cap space and going out of your way to extend Robert Tonyan and spread out his roster bonus money over 4 years? What difference does that make to save you $1.9 million and all the moves that they've made to free up $4.4 million over the last week? You're not doing that if you know you got $16 million coming down the pipe because you're going to move on from Aaron Rodgers. Their GM, Brian Gutekunst, has been pretty adamant and continues to be. They're not trading Rodgers. And I told you, it doesn't make any sense. If they're going to trade him, next year would be when it would make sense, because you got Devontae Adams coming off the books. All their receivers, for that matter, aren't under contract after next year. And so then you can start to say, all right, what does life like without Aaron look like? You could start to build without him then. But this year, you still got Devontae for another year. You got all pretty much the entire band is getting back together, at least for one more year. You want Aaron Rodgers a part of that. And I think they thought they were going to have him for one more year, and they underestimated, Rodgers' ability to be fed up and say, you know what, I want out. They were going to milk him for one more year and then trade him. Aaron is essentially beating them to the punch. He's not going anywhere, though. And he's going to ultimately, I think cooler heads prevail. He's going to play in Green Bay at least for one more year. I don't know what it looks like past that, but I don't see the Packers trading. But we'll see what happens. Right now, all signs point to the Packers holding on to the quarterback, the only quarterback they've known for the better part of a decade and a half. So we'll see as the Packers turns. We'll see what happens in that saga moving forward. But we'll keep close tabs on that as we do with the Julio Jones situation in Atlanta. But I already told you this multiple times this offseason. I expect one situation to be resolved via trade, and the other to be resolved with the player coming back. And I think Rodgers is going to ultimately be back in Green Bay. So that's going to do it for me. Your man, Louie T, here on the 165th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. If you haven't already done so, one final time, please subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also hit the like button. Over 110 of you out there, only 45 likes. You guys are killing me right now. That should be well up over 60, pushing 70, and I should be begging you to try to get it to 100 before we get out of here. We haven't even hit 50. You guys should be ashamed of yourselves. That said, please hit the like button. So I chastise you and then I beg. Please hit the like button. I beg of you. In any event, that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I really do appreciate you guys joining me on this lovely Wednesday afternoon here for the 165th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Until next time, get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. I'll see you guys tomorrow. If you're a Washington fan, I got a video uploading. If you're a card collecting fan, I got a live video coming here shortly. But other than that, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Washington Football Report live and on Friday for the next installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Until then, you guys, stay safe, take care, God bless.
Louie T Network.